SOC analysts are often overworked and underappreciated. In fact, many consider leaving their jobs or changing careers altogether. Devo recently hosted the 4th annual SOC Analyst Appreciation Day to give analysts long overdue kudos and encourage organizations to improve their job satisfaction and mental well-being. Missed the event? Don't worry. All the presentations and panels are ungated and available on demand. Visit securityweekly.com/Devo to watch. Welcome back, everyone, to the Security News here on Paul's Security Weekly. Again, people can check out the show notes. I don't know how many people check out the show notes, but we put a lot of effort and work into our show notes, and you can find them for this episode at securityweekly.com/PSW-848. Please go check those out. Sometimes we don't get to all the stories, and there's newsy nuggets in there. One of the big headlines that I think we want to lead in with is the FortiGate is kind of actually like a great term because it's kind of like Watergate, but it's kind of FortiGate. And I don't want to trash Fortinet on the show because like a lot of us work for vendors, we work with vendors, and we all live in glass houses. We all make software. All software has vulnerabilities. So I don't want to do the shaming game, but I think a lot of people don't agree. I think myself included with the way sometimes companies handle disclosures and vulnerabilities. And so Fortinet had a vulnerability in their FortiManager product. And the way that I've read this on the internet, and Kevin Beaumont was instrumental in kind of bringing this to light, pulling together information from Twitter and Reddit and a lot of other sources to kind of paint a picture of basically Fortinet was like, hey, we got a vulnerability. It's in this product. Released I don't know how much details, but at least announced it to their customers a week or so before all of this started becoming public. And I think some people, and again, I've been able to like verify or validate all of these findings, but this has been exploited, this particular vulnerability, by threat actors for quite some time. I've heard a year, perhaps, that this has been exploited. So I'll just give you kind of the quick hits and then we can discuss. FortiManager is a product that's put to market by Fortinet that's designed to manage firewalls, and specifically firewalls that are behind firewalls, right? Like firewalls can talk to FortiManager, FortiManager can talk to firewalls, and there's this kind of like interesting dynamic because, you know, a firewall will protect itself, but still needs to be managed. And you can read some of the documentation that's quoted in Kevin Beaumont's article. And what is also very interesting to me, this is not the first time that this like firewall management kind of platform has been exploited. At Eclipsium, we uncovered vulnerabilities in Zixil's zero provisioning protocol. Also, F5's big IP management platform also had kind of similar vulnerabilities, and now here we are on FortiManager. So about 60,000 are reported exposed to the internet on Shodan, but again, that number could be much higher in terms of installation base because it could be behind firewalls, and it depends on which way the connection's going. This is a remote code execution vulnerability accessible through the API, not to be confused with previous vulnerabilities. There was, I believe, a format string in the actual protocol that listens on like port 641 or something like that. But this, I believe, is accessible over the API. Again, Fortinet communicated this to customers. Customers are like, what is this update? Oh, this is security related. They would find out later. And then eventually a CVE, I believe today. Was when it was assigned. And now, having read up to this point, I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back here. I'm like, this is coming from Fortinet. Customers have reported to Fortinet this is being exploited in the wild. It's a remote code execution vulnerability. It now has a CVE. I'm like, it meets all of the criteria at this point to be on the CISA Kev, because I believe Fortinet works directly with CISA to disclose this information. Like literally an hour after I put that in our like internal channels, I saw CISA assign a Kev to this vulnerability. So the CVE is now on the Kev. So there was some Reddit threads that indicated that as you can steal the FortiGate. So the way it works is like, oh, I want to be managed by a FortiManager thing. And to do that, you need a certificate. but you can use this vulnerability to basically gain access to a FortiGate device that has a certificate that you can steal that you can then use in this particular attack. FGFM is the protocol. And again, that protocol has had issues in the past. The irony is, and where Fortinet caught some flack for it, and again, this is the point where I'm not going to pick on, they're trying to do the right thing. I don't know what happened in the communication of this vulnerability. They should have just done a better job, right? Like if I'm in the upper rankings of Fortinet, we should have pushed to like do a better job with the disclosure on this one, because previous to this incident happening, Carl Windsor, the company's chief information security officer, published a post in May affirming what he said was a commitment to being a role model in ethical and responsible product development and vulnerability disclosure. So to me, this is kind of like an integrity thing. Like, you know, a couple of weeks ago, they were like, we want to be responsible in our product development and vulnerability disclosure, but then they didn't live up to what they said in this particular disclosure. And some people have also picked upon the fact that they were FortiGuard Labs was kind of picking on some vulnerabilities that Avanti, one of their competitors, had. So those are the facts. Again, everyone has software that has vulnerabilities. But, you know, my kind of thing with Fortinet is like, you know, live up to what you say. And they did it in this case, and I don't know exactly why they didn't. No one would have faulted them if they had come out from the beginning. If Fortinet had said, look, we got this vulnerability, it's being exploited by threat actors. Look, here's a patch for it. I would have been like, great. Like, that's fine. Like, that's fine. Like, that happens. And that's totally fine. So that's kind of the highlights.
So Bill. I'm looking at the FortiGuard PSearch site now, and it looks like there was 11 CVEs that were released today, and then around 20 just looking at the month of October 2024.
You know,
what CVE are we talking
secure
about?
Code.
So what's
Hold on, go ahead, Bill.
What's the CVE that we're talking about?
Oh, I have that for you. Hold on.
It's CVE 2024 47575. Is that
yes,
the one?
Thank you. Okay. 45745. What was it again?
47575.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. Okay. So that one's listed at the top of their page right now as a critical.
It damn well should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like we talk about secure code or anything like that. I don't know. But and how security should be important in code. Not that we ever say anything about that, especially in the previous segment. But you know, Oracle turns out 300 roughly patches a quarter.
Sure. I mean, large software companies. I mean, you look at Cisco, you look at Oracle, you look at Fortinet. They've had products for a long time. They have a lot of code. I think it's easy for large companies, such as Fortinet, to. And this was stemming from previous researchers that I think were mentioned in one of the articles that I read on this. I think it was the Dan Gooden article from Ars Technica, you know, where they quoted researchers as saying like, hey, I looked at this and it looks like this particular product hasn't had a security audit in a long time. And, you know, like that happens. It's okay. So do a security audit and fix a bunch of stuff. And everyone's going to be fine with that. Like if you come out and say like, if there's transparency and honesty, right? Big vendors, again, I'm not picking on Fortinet. Any of the big vendors come out and say, look, we haven't done a security audit in this in a while, and we did one, and we fixed 12 or 20 vulnerabilities, and here's the guidance, and here's how you apply the patches. That's great. That's good. It's fine. It's fine. No one's going to come down hard on you if you go look for vulnerabilities in your own product and you fix them. Use Microsoft as an example. Early on, they engaged with the smartest researchers at the time in the early 2000s to go, hey, can you help us like identify a bunch of vulnerabilities? And they did. And yeah, we gave Microsoft a lot of flack, but then we're like, well, they addressed the vulnerabilities and they fixed them. And they started to change the culture. So that's fine.
I think you're right. I think transparency is the issue, right? Especially if you're a security vendor, right? Like that's exactly right. All we're expecting is transparency around that, right?
Yeah. What we don't have today is like great details on how this exploit works. So in my experience in following this from my day job very closely with a bunch of these firewall and VPN appliance vendors, is typically there'll be like a Horizon 3 and a WatchGuard Labs or someone similar to that that will do like a patch diff and then dig into, okay, what's the actual issue? And that gives us enough information to then go develop signatures and checks and exploits, which levels the playing field. It gives the threat actors the capability to develop an exploit. However, in this case, threat actors have already developed an exploit, so you might as well just give the rest of the world all the details so that the vendors, like the one that I work for, can go develop detections for the vulnerability. We can go develop indicators of compromise detection, right? Threat and vulnerability management. We can go do that and give the defenders a little more to go on. Right now, the scales are kind of tipped in the attackers' hands right now, in that they know what the vulnerability is. They know how to exploit it. The public at large now just knows that there's a vulnerability that has a CVE and we need to go apply a patch. We don't have much to go on beyond that. And that's where we're not in a great situation, in my opinion.
So just looking at the Fortinet side, it doesn't look like it's a patch that's been, and I might be wrong here, but it doesn't look like there's been a patch released. However, they do have a workaround for different versions of their software. Basically, you need to change a configuration.
Yeah, because it's like an authentication issue. I think you need to lock down. I was reading that on the Fortinet site too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, it says. Yeah, it's definitely you're changing the way that it authenticates certificates. It looks like, I'm doing this right here on the fly, so I might be wrong, but it right now it doesn't look like there is a patch to apply. It is a configuration that needs to be done.
Yeah, configuration change.
Yeah,
sure.
And it also just, also to Fortinet's, let's give them a little bit of, of congratulations here. They also show some log entries that you need to be looking for that would be indicative of an attack, as well as some indicators of compromised IP addresses,
like IP addresses,
numbers,
yeah,
phones, those kind of things.
So we do have some IOCs, which is good. I get still my feeling is at this point we should just have full details. If it's being exploited in the wild, cat's out of the bag. We should all just have full details.
Yeah, this one definitely, is getting a lot of attention. There's a lot of press and a lot of discussion about this right now. Kevin Beaumont's article was amazing. I love that it started in crayon.
He did a crayon diagram, man.
like that's unbelievable. Like that's how it should be done. Like all from now on, all future vulnerability logos need to be done crayon. Right.
In crayon. Where's the link to his article? Because he's got a great
in crayon.
Yeah, so it's my art. I'm sure that you have it as well, but it's my article number 2.
Is your article number 2 direct to Kevin Beaumont's?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He called it Burning 0 Days, FortiJump, FortiManager vulnerability used by nation state in espionage via MSPs. You definitely want to go read this one. This was a good one. And because he had now it's like, oh, you're not logged into Medium. Relax with that. But he had a great quote in here because he pulled the documentation from Fortinet. So it says the FortiGate to FortiManager FGFM protocol is designed for FortiGate and FortiManager deployment scenarios, especially where NAT is used. These scenarios include the FortiManager on the public internet while the FortiGate unit is behind a NAT. FortiGate unit is on the public internet while FortiManager is behind the NAT, or both FortiManager and FortiGate unit have routable IP addresses. So that kind of describes the situation here, where I'm like 60,000 exposed to the internet is like a modest guess, because the protocol was designed so if you've got like multiple branch offices or a whole bunch of Fortinet, for all of the things to be able to communicate with the FortiManager protocol. So while it all might not be exposed to the internet, if you're using this management kind of framework, you've got a lot more. There's a lot more than 60,000 devices with this protocol, is my point. Yeah, 541 was the port that FGFM operates on. And you can go back in history and do some searching. I should have put it in the show notes. That was on October 10th of this year. That was CVE 2024-23113 was I believe that's the format string vulnerability in the actual FGFM protocol, where if you access it over port 541, there was a format string vulnerability that I believe it was WatchGuard Labs wrote up an amazing article about that particular vulnerability. Yeah. Format string bug in FGFMD, which is the daemon that runs on the Fortinet devices. Well, that rounds that one out. You guys were both, I think all three of us are really excited about the USB Army knife.
Like, I know it's
like
silly,
really
it's
excited.
Really cool.
It is.
It dropped me in a frigging rabbit hole. I started looking at the Wi-Fi coconut again, and the and some of the other things.
And the Bash Bunny. So the Bash Bunny retails for $120. And like, look, Hack5 and the Darren and the folks do God's work. They make a great product. I think largely what you're paying for there is not just the hardware and the software itself, but it's that support, it's that ecosystem, it's the documentation. And I'm not going to fault that, right? Like if you're
in the community, right?
The community, yeah, exactly. Like and you want to be part of that, like, look, spending an extra $100 and you have the device and then you have access to all that, I'm not faulting that, right? And and people got to make money, and it's not always about just making money on the hardware itself. It's about monetizing on the user experience, and they provide an amazing user experience and community. Yeah, and not everyone's like us that likes to tinker a lot.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Darren and I go way back. I consider Darren a friend of mine, and we go way back. Dude. But the Hack5 hardware just isn't it. It's just not for me. I don't know the right way. It's just I don't know. It's not for me. I want.
But they've got a target audience for that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
They absolutely. I like so I don't fault. Like they're killing it, right? I do own a Bash Bunny, right? So I have
me too. One. I think Darren gave me one. He gave me the original version of it.
I bought mine. Yeah. I bought mine with hard-earned cash because it solved a problem that I needed to solve. That being said, I got to tell you, so this is Paul's story number 3, the USB Army knife. I have had this LilyGo USB drive in my Amazon cart. I've probably had it in there for a month, and just like, I know at some point I'm going to click the buy button, right?
So I bought one, and it's a LilyGo T dongle S3. Right. And so the GitHub repository I linked to, it says it's a USB pen drive shaped. It's an ESP32 S3. Great ESP32 platform, by the way, because the S3, I believe the big differentiator in the S3 is its Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and Bluetooth Low Energy in the same chipset. I think is what that S3 stands for. Yeah.
And this that device has imagine like a USB thumb drive. It's in a clear case. It has a little tiny screen, and it also it's like a USB drive. It has a USB connection on the front that you can plug in, and
16 megs of flash on board, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like, who needs
as
more
well
than
as a SPI adapter? It looks like it has what they call a Grove connector.
Yeah,
and I think the Grove connector is a 4-pin transmit, receive, ground, and 3.3 volt connector to it, which is very similar to what it is the exact same connector. I think it's the same connector that M5 Stack is using on a lot of their devices.
Cool.
To enable add-ons to be plugged into it.
So
M5.
So this GitHub repository that you've linked, Paul, it looks like it's a firmware or something that goes onto this device, right?
Yeah, he's created firmware for it. I haven't looked at the code yet, but it's Arduino. So basically, the way you get it on there is what the author. I want to say I recognize his GitHub repository, and I've used his other projects. He goes by the handle I am Shodan, ironically enough.
Ironically, we just talked about Shodan.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But he's got so you install VS Code, and then you put the platform IO IDE extensions on there that allow you to basically dump the code onto an ESP32 platform. Obviously, I think we've talked about on the show before, right? There's a lot of different ways to program and interface with ESP32 based devices. But I haven't like looked at his,
but it looks like
his code in depth yet.
It looks like this code right now includes USB hit attacks like a USB rubber ducky, right? So be able to do hit type attacks. Mass storage emulation, which would be to be able to save files onto the device, right? So it would emulate a USB drive. Network device impersonation, so that would be register as a USB network adapter, right?
But that's the big differentiator, because the standard USB hit attack requires that you're logged on to the system.
Right. It has to be unlocked, logged
and
on.
You're impersonating a keyboard and entering in the keystrokes. But the Bash Bunny was the next evolution of those attacks, where it can emulate different devices and still inject a payload, but not show up as a USB hid device.
That's right.
You remember
that's
USB
the big
chainsaw?
differentiator.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, didn't it do that as well, or am I hallucinating?
Similar.
So Sammy released one that was real similar, but nobody could ever really get it to work, right? And then it truly was the Bash Bunny that I think that was really solidified.
Well, and to Darren's credit, they put a lot of work. Him and his team put a lot of work into that to make it usable by people. These are It wasn't necessarily new techniques, but he took techniques and perfected them and made them usable. And there's absolutely a huge amount of value there.
I think what steps this up, right, is that it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth as well.
Yeah, so it runs it runs Marauder on it and has like a web interface. It can exfiltrate and you can control it from your phone. So like you can plug it into the system, connect to its Wi-Fi thing, and then control the system. And it's even got a VNC dropper that he built into it. So like you plug this thing in, the way I understand it is it deploys an agent to the system, which runs VNC. And then from your other device, like a phone, you can connect to it and grab screenshots of the system as it's working, because it's got VNC on it, which is awesome, by the way. That's what that was like the deal breaker for me. I'm like, all right, I'm spending the 20. I think it was
right?
On Amazon. I think I could get it cheaper on AliExpress, but I was like, I had some Amazon credit points or whatever, my credit card points on Amazon, and so I had like $66 in points. So I was like, you know what? I'm just buying it through Amazon. I'm like, hopefully it'll get here a little more quickly, but I don't know if that was necessarily true. But in any case, it was like $20 for this dongle. I'm like,
dude, what's so funny?
$20 for this device. I'm like, add to cart.
Literally the other day, I bought like one of those grills that you put in your mouth on Amazon that was $20. I should have just bought this. You know what I
mean? we spend money on ridiculous things, is Bill's point. And like
yeah. So the Sammy the IRS
has joined the
poison tap, right? So is what
poison tap. Yeah, they mentioned that in this one too. Yeah. But he also supports. So we've talked about the LilyGo T-Dongle S3, which I've seen a lot of people have used a lot of LilyGo stuff for really cool projects. A lot of LoRa stuff.
Yeah, a lot of LoRa.
From LilyGo, and they have that BlackBerry looking device that looks really cool. Like I've been checking out a lot of their stuff, but he's also supporting a WaveShare ESP32 S3, which also has a screen. It doesn't have the fancy clear case on it. That was similarly priced when I looked at it. But if you want to go super cheap, you can get an ESP32 S2, which doesn't have a screen and lacks Bluetooth or something like that. There's some differences. It doesn't have an SD card reader on it or support for SD cards.
So
that one's super cheap, right?
That one supports SD cards as well. That just spend the $20. No, I'm just saying that was a question mark. The one, so the LilyGo T-Dongle S3,
yes,
supports SD cards? Question mark.
It does support SD cards.
Oh my god, that's the one.
That's the one, dude. Yeah, but like just buy it. It's on AliExpress.
$12. Amazon for $16.59.
Yeah, so on AliExpress, it comes up for me as $10.98 for a T-Dongle S3 with an LCD, with 3 cents shipping. Delivery October 30th through November 5th on AliExpress.
Let's see what it shows up for me.
Yeah, isn't AliExpress? We were talking about that at my day job. It's weird. We'll be on a call. We have a tech call every week at my day job, and we have this like just tech forum at our job where we don't have to talk about work stuff. Sometimes we do, but other times we're talking about random topics, and hardware hacking topics is a theme. And we'll all bring up the same thing on AliExpress. It's a very expensive call sometimes because we'll all order kind of stuff, but we'll all be on AliExpress and we're like, my price is very different from your price. Like why AliExpress is a very strange site in that sense.
So mine's $15.98 with 4 cents shipping.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It all depends on, I don't know. I don't pretend to understand AliExpress in any case.
Yeah. They know what they can get from you.
But when you get into ESP32s, there's so many different makes, models, manufacturers on AliExpress. And what are you getting? What is it?
You see it for $8.
Yeah. You should just buy it now live on the air.
LilyGo T-Display S3, 1.91 inch AMOLED development board.
There's 2 versions of that device. Only one version with a screen has been tested, is what the author says.
Oh wow!
Look, when we're debating between $10 and $20 for something really cool to hack around with, like just you spend the $20, right? Like you just do it.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna click purchase. That
there you go.
Yeah, it's got to be one. These calls always get so expensive for me, Paul.
I know, right? But also my advice is don't be intimidated by the installation process. Again, I think this is where Darren and Hack 5 shine in making the user experience just completely seamless and tons of documentation and a community around it. And again, I applaud them for that. But also, like, don't be intimidated because I've done a lot of stuff specifically recently.
We also have Adafruit on the other side, right? We also have Adafruit that'll the Adafruit site will show you exactly how to
what to do,
configure.
But don't be intimidated by it because you do a little bit of research. Reach out to us if you're stuck, because if you're working with the ESP32 kind of style gear, basically it's all USB that's showing up as a serial device that you use to connect to dump firmware on the system. And that's, again, don't be intimidated. It's not hard. There's command line utilities, there's GUI utilities, there's VS Code. Like you get it working. It's not rocket science. You will get it working, and I will pledge money. If you get stuck, contact us. We'll help you with that. Yeah,
happy to.
Because all the cheap yellow displays, the same. All these are very variations of a theme on how you program them and get the firmware on them. So, and actually, his documentation's pretty good on this GitHub site. I haven't done it yet because I don't have one of the actual devices yet. I'm waiting for it to come in. But I'll report back. I'll get the firmware on there and report back.
Yeah, what I'd be curious about to see is put it up against a Bash Bunny. Are there any benefits? So I got to tell you, so this was purchased this year, so this is what you get.
That's a new Bash Bunny with the It's because it's got the red button. That's how you know the old to the new. It's got the red switch, and that switch changes the functionality of the Bash Bunny.
Right. So there's a 3 position switch that gives me 2 different payloads and then one to be able to configure it. Right.
Right.
And but I got to tell you, I was, and again, Darren's a friend of mine, and I consider.
Mine too.
But I don't like this form factor.
Why not?
Right. Like if this was plugged into your computer, Josh,
you would notice.
Well, that's why the Land Turtle was, I thought, better because it had the cable and it looked like a dongle.
Yeah. So
I have a Land Turtle. I mean, Darren was very generous. He gave me a whole bunch of his gear early on. Yeah.
He gave me the one with the SIM card in it, so you can do remote.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
Well, whatever so his marketing dollars paid off, right?
Paid off, man, right? Because he gave it to all 3 of us, and here we are talking about it on the show. So, props to Darren, man.
He knew what he was doing.
If everyone got marketing as much as Darren did, right, you'd all be in much better shape. So take a page from Darren's book. This is great marketing. Great marketing. Love it. It also, I mean, great names for it too. Could we all use the terminology, right?
Yeah.
Bash Bunny, Lantern, Wi-Fi Pineapple. Those terms stuck.
Yeah, the
in
rubber
our community.
ducky, right? Like
Ducky scripts is like he
Yeah.
created the standard, right?
Yeah.
He created the language.
It's the Ducky script language. I mean, you can get that on your Flipper Zero. Adopted the Ducky script language, the whole thing. Yeah, it's good stuff. Well, we'll report back. I think it's a great project and a lot of fun to play around with. The ESP32 is just taken off, right? And I think it's ironic that I think the Flipper has kind of, because you spend a lot of, comparatively speaking, you spend a lot of money on a Flipper Zero, and then you go, wait, the add-ons for the Flipper Zero and the Flipper Zero itself, a lot of that functionality can be emulated by this ESP32 platform. And that was my journey and path. When I first got a Flipper, I was like, well, that's cool. But I'm like, what is this based on? And what are these add-ons based on? I'm like, oh, it's just ESP32s. And then you get into that whole world. And you're like,
I know.
There's literally hundreds of different devices that you don't even have to code it yourself. You can find other people that have done similar projects that do like really cool stuff, like hacking wise and not hacking wise. My friends tell me that. I'm like, I want to learn ESP32 program. I want to get better at it. They're like, dude, do ESP or I'm sorry, what is it called? Home kit?
ESP Home.
ESP Home.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's how I learned it. It had nothing to do with security. I just want to do home automation.
Yeah.
The community behind the ESP Home automation is massive.
Like
massive.
And man, they make they have it where you just plug it in and use your browser and it flashes the device. Yep. You don't even have to do anything.
I don't like those. I don't trust those sites. I've seen that too. I know. I'm always really like weirded out.
I'm like,
where I have this USB device plugged into my plugged into my laptop or computer or USB device, and I go to a website and it puts firmware on my USB device. It always just kind of weird me out.
I know, right? Yeah.
But it works. The cheap yellow display had that flasher tool as well.
I've been looking at Home Assistant, but this ESP Home is pretty cool.
ESP Home is incredible. Yeah. And it runs really good on a Pi. It just, I mean, it's a weekend, and you'll just nerd out like crazy, but
what's a weekend?
That's
what's a weekend when we're talking about hacking and cool hardware stuff, right?
Man, like I remember the first time I heard about ESPs, it was ESP8266.
Yes, that was the original platform.
I was in the parking lot dropping my kid off at the at the daycare center, and a buddy of mine, Michael, comes up to me and he goes, "Have you heard about the ESP8266?" No, I haven't. What is it? It's the size of your thumbnail. And, it's a full Arduino. And I just remember like, what are you, because, at that time, an Arduino, it was the size of a Raspberry Pi.
Like a Pi. Yeah.
That's right. Incredible.
Well, I think we have to transition now to my quick hacking tips, because this is variations on a theme. And there's one project in there. So, it was a relatively light news week this week.
It was.
And so I went through some of my Paul's nerdy hacking things that I saved, and I added them to the show notes. So if there was ever a week you want to go check out the show notes, this is probably the week to do it. And one of the projects that I found in there was this Wi-Fi. Is that how you would say it? WIFYDRA.
Yeah, Wi-Fi.
There's a war driving tool for the simultaneous monitoring of all 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi channels for network beacons, and includes the ability to geotag the location of found networks and write the data to an SD card for uploading to wiggle.net. Sign me up.
Well, here's the thing. I've got a question for you. And I just saw this on the show notes tonight, but I'm like, ooh, could I use this to replace a Wi-Fi coconut?
Yes.
Because you can't get a Wi-Fi coconut, but this is now a custom-built card. You have to do a couple things to. Apparently, they screwed up a couple of the cables.
I'm going to caveat my yes with these ESP32s only support 2.4 gigahertz. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very important to preface our entire conversation about how awesome the ESP32 platform is up to this point
Right.
that it only supports 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. Now,
640K was enough. Anyway.
but now, having said that, there are going to be someday modules that support other
5G.
frequencies in the 5 gigahertz range. When I talk to some of my friends that are way more into this than even I am, they're like, I haven't seen them yet, but I'm told it's coming, which would be awesome. And a lot of folks, I was talking, I think, during the break about our friend Rick, Zero Chaos, and the other person who I can't remember.
Tragorn? Wasabi?
No, who does Rick run? Excuse me, the RF Hacker Sanctuary, CTF.
You're probably talking about the other Rick Melendick.
Yes, thank you.
He doesn't
Rick
do that
and Rick.
anymore. He's not part of that anymore.
He's not part of that anymore. Okay, but so they run this. It used to be called the Wireless Hacking Village. Now it's the RF Hacker Sanctuary. They run a CTF that's all radio frequency stuff, and they've enabled this whole community, which I think is amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
To like part of the to participate in the CTF, you've got to do stuff like this to have like all these ESP32s that are listening on all the channels. So it's enabled like all this innovation and all these projects just for the CTF. But I'm like, all these projects are awesome. When I was at, I think it was B-Sides Charm, I was chatting with someone who had built something very similar to the Wi-Fi project that we're looking at. And I know other folks that have implemented it completely different, right? They've got like a server chassis and they've got PCI cards that are listening on all the channels, right? But it's enabled like all this creativity and innovation, which I think is just amazing. So this project, he has on one PCB, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 ESP32s to listen on all the channels. Then you get other ESP32s that are like the controllers for all of those. Similar to what I was talking about last week, where they've got M5 stack devices that can act as the primary and then a bunch of secondaries and all the channels. So there's lots of different ways to skin this cat. And I'm like, I remember when Larry and I first started even thinking about how we would build a device to listen on all the Wi-Fi channels, it was USB dongles.
Yeah,
and boy, is that slow and clunky and awful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here we are today. I'm like, this is so exciting.
I mean, so just looking at this, like if you're listening to this, you have to go look at this project just for the picture alone, right? So it's this the single board that has all the ESPs on the outer edge on both sides, and
with external antenna connectors.
With external, right? And then
I have an ESP32S3 with an external antenna connector and the cable and the antenna that you can get on AliExpress for roughly $8, including the whole thing.
$6, right? But he's got a GPS antenna,
and then you put a GPS module on it.
SD card. This thing's, I mean, it just looks like something TSA is going to take away from you.
Right.
Well, looks like it would be something TSA would take away from me. Yeah. But it's so friggin' cool that you can take that and just mung all that interface together. And I'm trying to figure out.
Be interesting to see how they power.
He's using a GPS breakout board.
Yeah. So it looks like he's powering it with an 18650 battery pack over USB-C. What a cool project.
Yeah, these projects are just awesome.
You know, so one of the things like your hacking tips, the THC tips and tricks hacks cheat sheet is fantastic.
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
This is because we were talking like a couple of weeks ago, Bill, about THC, the hacker's choice, and like the storied history they have in our community. And I don't know how I stumbled across this, but it's just like a ton of tips. So like, for example, if you want to stop from showing up in the W or who command on a system when you log in via SSH and not be logged to the SSH.known hosts, they give you the SSH command for that.
Yeah.
Like that's just one example on a list of hundreds of different tips they have in this cheat sheet that you totally have to like go bookmark and check out and read over the weekend or whatever.
Yeah, so I've had this bookmarked for quite a long time, and a couple months, maybe a little bit longer. It's something I hadn't not purposely not shared, but like this is like we all have like those cheat sheets around like, oh, gosh, how do I use Vim or whatever, like this is my favorite cheat sheet for by far. It is just, it's fantastic. Like how to hide on the system, how to hide processes, that how to hide SSH.
It's like, I know I can do that with SSH, but I don't remember the command. Yeah. So like having this bookmarked is something you need to have. Or this bash, I know I can do this bash command to do this, but what is the syntax? I don't remember, but someone's documented it for you, which is great.
That's why they're the also, hacker's choice.
Just quick hacking tips. If you want to uncover redacted text and PDF files, I got this from the Hive mailing list. I don't know if you guys subscribe to the Hive mailing list. Great mailing list. It's one of the mailing lists I subscribe to. And so X-Ray is the one to uncover redacted text and PDF files. I also got the next one on the list, which is a proof of concept WordPress plugin fuzzer that led to the discovery of 300 vulnerabilities in WordPress. It's called WordPress Garlic. So that's linked to there too. And again, those came from the Hive great mailing list that's out there. And the last one on there was just it's I talked about the M5 stack hacking firmwares last week. Mm-hmm. And the one that I've been playing with is called Evil M5 Core 2. And even since last week, they've made a recent update. So they've pushed out new code. I want to say I updated my devices last week. When I checked it today, it just keeps getting more awesome. So they've upgraded the firmware to include a network scanner now. Like it does some kind of network scanning. Man. I haven't even had a chance to dig into it yet. They've made another update to the firmware to add more functionality. So this is a hugely active project. It supports multiple different devices from M5 stack, from the very smallest, cheapest ones all the way to the most expensive ones. And they just keep updating the code. I'm like, this is great. Like, this is saving me so much time. I don't have to code this stuff myself. There's a whole bunch of folks just adding all kinds of random features to enable this hardware to do different things. In all the M5 stack, going back to ESP32, they're all ESP32 based devices, which is great.
Oh, that M5 shop is pretty. They got the Nano. Oh,
dude, you want to talk about spending money?
I know, right?
It's just like, I'm keeping M5 C6 in business. But that way,
Nano C6 is beautiful. Did you see this? It does Thread and Matter and Zigbee. Oh my goodness!
They have LoRa stuff. They have modules that do RFID. I mean, it goes on, and all these fine folks in the community have all these great projects that they're just adding code and functionality to. I mean, some for not like hacking cybersecurity stuff, but others, a lot of stuff that does that as well.
Evil. Oh God, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, dude, it's a big.
Oh, they have cute little robot kits for the kids.
They do. Yeah, you can totally get a robot. Yes. It's amazing.
Adorable.
So some just like straight up maker projects. But again, a lot of folks are taking these devices and trying to make them be feature compatible with a Flipper Zero for a fraction of the price. The M5 card computer is $30. It does so much with even some inexpensive add-ons. It does a lot of what the Flipper Zero can do, which is amazing.
Oh, this is dangerous. I hate you so much.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
My God, this is so dangerous.
Yeah, this is not like cheap AliExpress ESP32s. This is you're going to spend, I've spent a few $100s at this point, but I've got a ton of devices to show for that few $100. They can do everything from RFID to 433 megahertz Wi-Fi, wireless RF stuff, little devices with keyboards and screens, the whole thing.
Yeah. So we've talked about this before. I don't actually have any M5 stack, but I have a buddy of mine, Noah, that just really got into them big. And I feel like
Noah Axon is how I found them.
Oh, that's awesome.
So Noah's how. So I started following Noah on Instagram.
And I know, and they're like, he has like beauty shots, like glamour shots, right?
I'm like, dude, what is that? And the device that turned me onto it has an orange case and an LCD screen and 3 buttons.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, Noah, what is that? And he's like, that's the Stick C. Back then it was just Stick C. They came out with Stick C Plus and different iterations of it. And that's what got me. And that device is like $20 or something like that.
I think what you get with the M5 is you get a higher quality, right? Like you
get a case and a screen and buttons
that work. Right. And,
yes.
and they connect together if,
and you get the Grove connector so you can put different add-ons on it as well. It's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah. Noah's the one that turned me on to all that
That's
stuff.
so funny.
So props.
Yeah. I miss that guy. He used to be a Kansas City guy, and then he moved to Texas.
Right.
And then he came back for a little bit. I saw him a couple times, and I think he's moved back to Texas again. So
he did say, I was following him on social media. He did say he moved. He actually has a subscription, and I pay for a subscription to his Instagram cool. to get his content. Yeah.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. Cool. That's awesome, man. That's good for you. He's a good dude.
All righty. Oh, well, while we're on it, let's talk about Bill. We've talked about MicroPython a little bit in the past, but like, what's your impression of? We're both kind of like not huge fans of MicroPython,
so,
right?
I'm just going to tell you, I am like, if you were to ask me, Bill, if you're going to write something, what are you writing in it? Python.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's my, I think everybody might be my
crutch.
Well,
largely because the LLMs will just write Python for you and get you 80% of the way there.
No, I was writing Python before anybody even had a twinkle in their eye about AI or whatever. But, it's kind of like my crutch. It's my go-to. But I have never written anything in MicroPython. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong. Like, give a comment if I'm wrong, and maybe I need to explore it. But my opinion of it is, I would much rather stumble with
C++. Arduino.
Right. Knowing that what I'm I just have more control. I feel with MicroPython, I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if this import exists. I don't know.
It's very slow.
Just all of that. And I have a very low opinion of MicroPython, but I've never really used it either.
Well, right? So the example is, they ported MicroPython to the Flipper Zero platform, and what like made the light bulb go off for me was like they wrote tic-tac-toe in MicroPython for the Flipper Zero. And I'm like, that's what MicroPython, I believe, was designed for and good at. If you want to create like a small little silly game and learn, and I don't want to downplay it, because if you got younger folks that are wanting to get into embedded development, right, and they want to get a small device and they want to use an easier language like Python, and they want to write a very simple game like Snake or tic-tac-toe, it is absolutely perfect for that. It's perfect for that. When we get into what more of the hacker community wants to do with this hardware and software, it immediately outgrow MicroPython, in my opinion. And you just, like we said, you got to go to C++.
But what I find is really interesting is, in my opinion, the exact inverse happens when you move to a computing platform. Like I feel like I can do anything in Python. I can do anything in Python.
Well, I mean, that will transition to another one of our stories. But Josh, go ahead.
But anyway,
hey, what do you know what our, we're undefeated, son, and we're going all the way.
You got them riled up in one sentence. Love it. No, in all seriousness,
I really know why people hated the Patriots now. Like, I really do. Like, I'm feeling that wholeheartedly. Like, I want to hate the Chiefs so much, but then I think about how everyone else hated the Patriots.
I know.
And I'm like, too. But I've been a Patriots fan since birth, right? And I was like, why hating the Patriots? Because we're winning? And I'm like, I just want to hate the Chiefs because they're winning. And I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm a hypocrite if I hate the Chiefs. Yeah. I am.
Okay, so Python is.
I still hate the Chiefs, though.
All right, let's go.
But I was the same way as a Patriots fan. I was like, yeah, whatever. That's cool. Like, whatever.
I just hate all sports ball. But anyway, all right. So
Python.
How long have you been coding in Python, Bill? When you say that, like, how long has it been actually?
So it was one of my 30-day challenges. So all through college, what I learned was, I learned Fortran or not Fortran. I learned Pascal.
Do you have?
I was going to say Pascal, because we're about the same age, Bill, and we learned Pascal.
And what he's saying is that he has ibuprofen upstairs, downstairs, in the car,
and in the car,
and in his wallet.
That's right. So, and what I learned in college is I really, really enjoyed programming, but I didn't want to be a programmer.
Why?
Right?
Wow, dude, we're 100%. I'm with you, dude.
Yeah.
I say the same thing. Why is that? That's a good question.
It's just not what I wanted to do for a job. Like
I know, it's weird.
And so it wasn't until so I started 30-day challenges in 2017, maybe. So it was probably 2018 is when I started. Maybe
Okay,
a
what's a
little bit
30-day
earlier.
challenge? We're going deeper down this rabbit hole, man. What's a 30-day challenge?
Start, stop, or learn something new every 30 days. Start, stop, or learn something. And so like it's just amazing what you can. So it's a personal thing, but like if you just dedicate an hour a day for 30 days, you can learn anything.
What is this hour a day?
Well, so I have maybe a little bit more time on my hands than you do, but
how old are your kids?
Yeah, they're in college.
They're older. Yeah. Bill's kids are older. Yeah.
But so that's when I started, and I took a course called Python the Hard Way, and
I remember that. Holy shit! Yeah,
and
just basically just typing the shit in.
Just type it in, and you can't, for whatever reason, you can't. I mean, it literally has it up there, and you just type what it's showing, and you make a mistake, and it doesn't work, and you have to go back and all of a sudden, like everything.
Where's
really
that
kind
fucking
of
semicolon?
That's
exactly
right. That is exactly right.
Well, in Python, it's not a semicolon; it's the spacing.
Yeah, it's space.
It's always
always
a
spaces or tabs.
Who the fuck cares? Yeah.
But ever since then, like what I feel like it was maybe earlier than that. I feel like maybe it was 2015-ish because I've been doing it for a while. But what I learned was being able to program completely changed my ability in computing and security, and just being able to like, what, I'm going to dedicate an hour and a half, and I'm going to write a script that does all this work in 15 seconds, right? Or I could spend 3 days doing this. It just completely changed the way that I look at computing problems. And I wish it's one of those things, so I'm in my mid 40s, that I wish I would have kept with after college. I gave it up for, after in college, I was like, I didn't keep programming. I didn't, stay up with it. And now I'm like, I'm really more focused on Rust or Go, just because they're the new hotter things.
Yeah,
but
that's on my list. I had a similar progression. I don't remember when I started programming in Python, but I learned Java and C in school, and I did some of that after I graduated, and then I did a little bit of Perl, and that was awful. And I went to Bash for a little while because I'm like, I need to just solve problems for myself as a sysad, because I was a Unix Linux sysadmin. I'm like, I spent a lot of time in Bash, but then I got really frustrated in Bash.
For sure.
Especially if you got to do
everybody does.
Yeah, everybody does.
Because if you got to like parse strings and do math, Bash is fucking awful.
Yeah.
And then at some point,
same
as Bill though, like I kind of didn't program for a while, and then I did some stuff in Python, and then I did a lot of stuff in Python. PBWorks, right?
I was just gonna say,
was my like big Python, but I had done some smaller Python projects before that, and then after that, I was like, yes, Python. Then I just most of my projects now are like Bill, like Python is the go-to language, but I also now I'm kind of enamored with Rust and Go as languages that I want to learn. I'm not sure which one right now.
It's
like
Rust.
Go or
it's Rust.
Rust.
Oh my gosh. First of all, so they both have they both can have cross compatibility, and you can compile for everything. But I just find that it's for me at least, that's a good question. Why? I think maybe it's for everybody. Like,
I don't mean to be rude. I'm just honestly curious.
No,
but
you think coming from Python, you think Rust is a better path in your opinion, Bill, than Go?
Thank you for being more eloquent about that. The path from Python to Rust was easier for me than Python to Go. Go is definitely more C based, which is fine because I have C experience anyway. But just I got to tell you, man, it is something magical when so I wrote a custom C2 that I'm going to be using on a future engagement, and I needed it to work in Linux, Mac, and Windows. Rust. So I wrote it in Rust. Compile. All of them work.
Wow.
Yes. And I don't need Python installed. I don't need Python installed in the Windows box or whatever. It's just perfect. and then I'm not a developer, but Rust comes with a lot of like memory, and
memory safe.
yeah,
it's memory safe language, right? Wait, I thought wasn't Go memory safe, or am I hallucinating?
I don't know.
To a certain extent, I think. But, well, I want to say,
but I haven't looked. I don't know.
There's some nerds. I know there's some nerds on here right now just screaming at me.
Audience, you're more than welcome to correct me, but I would articulate it as Go is a more memory safe language than C or C++, but Rust is a more memory safe language than Go. Is the way that I understand it, like on the server. And I haven't done a lot of research into it, just from like paying attention to what's happening and talking with people. That's my understanding.
I know that Rust is memory safe by design. I thought Go was memory safe, but I wasn't sure if it was like designed as a memory safe language. You know what I mean?
I think Go gives you a little more control over the memory management than Rust does. Is my assessment. But again, if folks want to weigh in, I think that's something we haven't like had a subject matter expert on the show to kind of weigh in on. It would be an interesting interview to talk with someone about languages and memory safety.
I've got
like as a researcher that's really dug into it, because again, I'm in the same camp as Bill. Like I was a full-time developer, and I was like, I don't want to be a full-time developer, but I do like to program, and so I've dabbled, right?
Yeah, it like if you're one of those people like I'm super into technology, I'm into security, I'm into all these things, but I've never done any programming. Learn. It's not hard. It's really start.
Yeah,
Python,
pick a language
Python.
and learn. I think for me, I like recommending Python. I mean, go learn a bunch of learn as many languages as you want, because that's going to give you an amazing experience. If you're getting into cybersecurity, working in cybersecurity, definitely pick a language. Like, I don't even care if that's PowerShell or scripting. Any kind of programming language is what I would recommend, right? I think for the most kind of versatile for what we do in cybersecurity, Python would be something that I'm like, if you're going to put a lot of effort into learning something, Python's where it's at, except when Python falls down for performance. And there are situations where it falls down for performance. And Marcus Hutchins has the most amazing friggin' video on the planet. And it's my story number 12. And his title is, I vulnerability scanned the entire internet and accidentally made a botnet. And if that title doesn't engage you in watching his or in consuming his content, I don't know what does. Because I saw that title, and for 19 years I've read article and video headlines, and that one stands out to me. It was like, it's an 8-minute video. I watched the entire thing.
How many times?
Just once, because I did it as part of my prep for the show today, as well as doing my day job and all the other things I have to do during my day. And I set aside 8 minutes for Marcus's video, which again, if you're reading an article is usually like 2 to 3 minutes. And I'm quite honestly, a lot of times I'll have AI summarize an article for me, because in any given week, you guys know I'm reading 20 or 30 articles, and there's only so much time in a day. But I took the time and I set aside 8 minutes to watch Marcus's video, and I recommend everyone set aside that 8 minutes, because it is funny, it's entertaining, it's well produced,
of course,
and you learn something from the video. I'm like, dude, he's firing on all cylinders.
He
crossed 100,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, and I was like, absolutely, you should, man. Like, you should have 1 million subscribers with your content, because I watched that one video. And he explained the cups vulnerability. He explained how he was going to research it. And he said, look, I thought about writing this in Python. And I think he even started writing it in Python, because he's like, I need to scan the entire internet. It's like 4 billion IP addresses. And I need to send this one packet to all 4 billion IP addresses on the internet on port 631, I think, right, for the internet printing protocol. And when he does, if it's vulnerable, that system should make an HTTP connection back to his web server. And he's like, I bought a 48 core, 128 gigs of RAM system to run this web server, collect all the responses. And he's like, when I scanned the internet, Python was not what I did. He's like, so I brushed up on my C++. And in his video, there's a image that comes up that says C++ for dummies. right? So like, just when you think like, all us hackers in the world that have been around for a while or whatever know we don't know everything, right? Like we try and figure it out just like the rest of you. Like we're all people, we're all humans, and we got to figure it out. And I love that about his video. It's like, all right, so I wrote it in C++, but he basically like created a botnet and denial of service himself, because a subset of that all 4 billion IP addresses on the internet, there was about 100,000 that responded as vulnerable. Right. So when he sent the printing protocol packet to that host, it connected back to his web server. He's like, but then when I went to bed and I woke up in the morning, he's like, there were still 30,000 hosts continually sending packets to my web server. And what Marcus realized was, wait a minute, I sent one packet to a server and triggered that server to continually send packets back to a specific IP address or host name. He's like, that's a denial of service condition, right? It's an amplification attack. And that's the crux, to me, of the video. Like, there's a lot of other nuances. Like, yes, there was 100,000 hosts who were vulnerable. He explains the vulnerability, how basically an attacker can send this packet. It creates a printer on the network that could be a malicious printer. So there's another attack vector where I can create a malicious printer, basically like a virtual printer on that network. I could intercept print jobs because the user does have to print something, but I could intercept that and collect sensitive information in PII, and that's an attack vector. But he also uncovered the amplification attack, where one packet triggers a server to flood continually HTTP traffic to another host. So it can be used for denial.
So if anybody's listening, do not replicate this. Marcus is a known criminal.
I was thinking that. Yeah. I like how Marcus. We got to have Marcus on the show. Is what I was thinking.
He's a good dude.
He's a great person, a stand-up person in the community. But I like how he kind of will do kind of experiments like this. I think that's Marcus's thing, but with good intentions. Like, to me, the difference between a hacker and a criminal, one of the major differences is intent.
Completely agree.
Marcus was like, my intent was to just like figure stuff out. But also, he's like, I took all those 30,000 IP addresses and I reported them to the governments and ISPs so they could fix the problem. So like, intent is a huge, he wasn't doing this to denial of service an enemy. He wasn't doing this to take down a government or whatever. He was doing this to make the internet a better place, was his intent, right? At the end of the day. And that's admirable, in my opinion. So yeah, you got to go watch that video. It's
speaking of YouTube videos.
Yeah. You got some stories in there.
Excuse me. My story number 7. All the DEF CON 32 videos are starting to show up on YouTube.
I'm behind on my viewing. I know I got someone I want to watch.
Yeah, everybody is, Paul. Everybody is. But if you either missed DEF CON this year, or just like the rest of us went to DEF CON didn't get to go to your talk.
Yep.
They're starting to show up. This is always one of my favorite times of the year to because you can sort I link to the channel so you can see the videos. You can go through there, scroll through and and pick out the ones that look entertaining. One of the first one I watched, the first one I watched, and sorry, I should have had this up. It was, the title of it, I think it was one of the ones that we covered right before DEF CON. It was, I'm the AI guy in your, so here, on your Ocean 11 team, I'm the AI guy. Technically, I'm a girl. That talk was fantastic. So one of the things that she talked about was, so she did a really good job of walking the line about not disclosing the attack. But one of the things that she talked about was how AI is being used in like security cam footage and facial recognition, and how, like, what an attack on a facial recognition actually means. And
I'm sorry, Bill. I'm really distracted at the moment because I sorted all of the DEF CON videos on their YouTube channel by popularity.
Hell yeah.
Are you ready?
Which one is
You know where I'm going with
I know,
this.
man. Yeah.
You ready for the top 3, Josh? Does anyone know what the top one is? Top one we've talked about on the show before. Top one
right?
is Deviant.
Oh, Deviant.
On elevator hacking, 807,000 views. Second one is knocking drones offline, knocking my neighbor's kid's cruddy drone offline with 672,000 views. Number 3 is from. So I feel like I'm in the presence of infamy and greatness. Number 3 is Bill Swearingen.
Yeah.
Hack see the police. 627,000 views. Bill, you are number 3 in the most watched DEF CON videos of all time.
I know. And like it makes my
head
that's so amazing. Big. It makes my head so big. But anyway, I do want thanks for interrupting me, but I do want to go back to this talk.
I couldn't help it, dude, because I'm talking to the Bill Swearingen, man.
I know, yeah. But listen to this. I'm trying to bring.
Sorry.
So,
continue now.
Thank you.
Continue now.
But one of the things that she talked about was, what does hacking facial recognition systems? What does that mean? And this blew my mind. So this absolutely blew my mind. So she talked about if she could introduce 1 or 2 things in something that she's wearing or something that's around her that would reduce the so the 99% confidence level around facial recognition. If you could reduce that 20%, if you could reduce that 40%, right? Like not 0, right? But just if you could reduce, like, so if I were to be scanned by a facial recognition system and it would say, that's Bill, and I'm 99.8% sure.
That's Bill. He's number 3 on the most watched DEF CON videos.
Versus,
we know him.
That's
He's on a
Bill.
list.
That's Bill, and we're 60% sure that that's Bill, right? And she was able to accomplish that with a very specific set of earrings, and that blew my mind. Like,
with a set of earrings,
a set of earrings.
Earrings?
Yep. So we've probably all seen
do the earrings that would do the earrings have some kind of technology in them?
Nope, no technology, just patterns, right? So we've seen this before.
Oh, interesting.
We've seen this before with person detection AI, and some people will wear a shirt that has certain patterns on it that make it very difficult for an AI.
This changes how I accessorize, Bill.
Me too, man. I want to get my ears pierced, right?
Right. I'm getting some earrings now.
You're talking about Adam Harvey and his face painted stuff.
That's right.
And,
yep.
You've got UV LEDs built into your hat so that they can't see you.
But now you're just wearing earrings. Right. Okay. And so, like, one of the things that,
which of your stories is that? Because I didn't see that.
Well, so this is my story number 7. DEF CON 32 videos are being uploaded to YouTube.
It's like Bill's pick for the best one. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was the DEF CON talk was on your Ocean's 11 team. I'm the AI guy, technically girl. Harriet Farlow is her name. And the talk was just, it was well done. It was fantastic. It really changed my opinion on what hacking facial recognition meant, right? Because Josh, just like you, I was like, well, if I wear a hat with a bunch of IR LEDs, and I blow out the sensor.
Yeah, but that's a different thing for me. I really want to get a hat that has IR LEDs on it that I control from a device, so that when I'm changing the TV stations or turning off the TV in a restaurant, I don't have to really have it. I want a small, device that's in my hand that no one can see, but the infrared stuff is actually built into my hat. That's very difficult to detect.
A long time ago, I built a TV beacon into a baseball hat.
Yes,
and it was
wildly successful. I bet
not on the brim, not out here, but just behind the brim.
Yeah.
And
here,
yeah, exactly, right there. And what happened was because you could put them, because the back end of them you had to wire them, and you could put it inside the upturned cloth, inside the cap, and that worked out. And they weren't really that noticeable because remember, they're IR LEDs; they don't shine light.
They don't shine,
with human eye. So these days, what I would do is I would actually get. Do you know those chip on board LED strips?
Yeah.
So that, like, it doesn't, instead of having a bulb,
right? There's no bulb. It's they make them for the Flipper Zero. Yep.
Right. A continuous strip of.
So it's just longer leads material. I need to something like a flipper to get those on there. Yeah.
Or you'd use an LED lights. If you can find an IR LED light strip, LED strip, whatever, you could do that, and that would actually be pretty easy. But
I want to put it like all around the hat. That would be.
possible.
It's just up in my
funny.
prank. It's just up in my prank game. That's all it is.
So I don't know
it's
if
just shenanigans. It's shenanigans.
So I don't know if we've talked about this, but the shenanigan, and I'm no longer doing the TV Be Gone stuff. What I do is I join the guest Wi-Fi network at wherever place I'm at and Chromecast to the TVs.
Yes, right.
Like that, it's way funnier to put your own content on the TV.
To put I just want to stream the movie Hackers on every single TV, rather than the Chiefs game.
Well, because you know how the Chiefs game is going to end.
We do. We know that they're going to win, and that's why we're all mad. I do want to talk about the robot vacuum. It's funny. I had a conversation with my wife. So my wife was an early adopter of the robot vacuums. She bought me one of the first iRobot vacuums. And since then, so my wife and I mean, we've been together since 2003, which is just when this technology was coming out, and we've been adopters of all the different vacuums every time, because these things die.
Yeah,
they run over poop. She's got the whole thing down pat. She gets the warranty from Best Buy, and even if it runs through dog poop, because we have 4 dogs at home, she just brings it back and she'll get like the replacement for it. Like, she loves the robot vacuums and has.
I don't know what's going on with this thing, but it stinks.
Yeah, dude. 20 years. So 20 years. 20 years she's been like technology-wise early adopter, and specifically in the robot vacuums. And we've had ones that had talk. Yeah. We have not this particular model, but we have other ones that talk. And I was listening to a different podcast, and I wanted to tell, I think it was like Tom and Kevin and Scott, the Shared Security podcast. I wanted to share with them the feedback, because I was like, no, there is a use case for your vacuum talking to you, and it's for diagnostics. So because my wife we've had every single model from every single manufacturer over time of these vacuums, diagnostic wise, having that audible talking back to you, it's
bin
like
is full. Please,
yes, it tells the bin's full. The sensor is malfunctioning.
Yeah.
I'm low on charge. You need to refill the mopping like whatever it is, it actually tells you. Unlike, like a PC, refill. Or we talk about ESP32s, where they largely rely on like flashing lights and LEDs on the, your motherboard. It's like, okay, oh, the white LED is flashing, so I got to go to the manual and figure out, like, when my PC boots, the white LED flashing continuously means that the RAM is not seated properly, or it's incompatible RAM speed, right? It doesn't do that. It would just, if it was a vacuum, your PC would tell you, hey, the RAM you have installed, Paul, is an incompatible RAM speed. Please install the appropriate RAM sticks. And that's what your vacuum does.
But you better call me Mr. Acidorian.
And exactly, right? And so I was talking to my wife about this morning, and she's like, I want to get like a new vacuum or something. I'm like, oh, like what manufacturer was it? And it wasn't this one. I'm like, but some people hacked the robot vacuums, so they spew like profanity at you. And she's like, that's awesome. Can we get that one? And can you hack it so that it spares us? Because that sounds like a lot of fun. I was like, yes. Now that's one reason why we're married. So
here's the thing. Tell me the rationale. I understand the rationale behind the speaker. Tell me the rationale behind the camera.
Well, so it needs a camera to be able to see where, like a Tesla.
No, it doesn't.
Like
it needs an ultrasonic. It needs an IR.
But that's debatable. And I agree, Josh. And that's debatable. What is the appropriate technology? Camera, proximity, like whatever the sensor technology is to figure out where it is and where it needs to go. I completely agree. The camera, they were talking about this in the Shared Security podcast, like, oh, I need to connect to my robot vacuum remotely from my board meeting, and I need to see like where it is in the living room. That's not the use case for me. The use case for me is I wanted to be able to, what I really wanted to do, and I forget what they were talking about, but my biggest problem with robotic vacuums now is it sucks up cables.
Yep.
Whether that's a power cord or like your charging cables. Like if it could sense like, oh, that's a cable, and if I run over that, I'm going to suck it up, and that's going to be a bad day. I want a camera technology or some kind of sensor technology to do that. So, Josh, to answer your question, that's the use case that I want.
Yes and no. And my answer why I say no is that, yeah, the use case is totally valid, but why do I have a camera that is aimed up? Why don't I have a camera that's aimed just for the 6 inches to a foot ahead of me? That's it. Like physically, the camera should be unable
because
to see.
when I get out of the shower and I'm in just a towel and the vacuum goes underneath me, I'm going to send you the footage, Josh. That's
Aw, you're so sweet.
I'll send a copy of that to Bill too.
Yeah,
because I love you
Bill
both.
will appreciate that much more than I will.
I'll print it out on my printer.
But this one, so I don't. Again, I just heard about this story, Bill, from another podcast. I haven't really read into it, but it says that it will insult the owners, and I believe this was Bluetooth proximity where they could change the voice, right?
No. From what I'm reading, so just to be clear, this article was posted on Malwarebytes, and it's my article number 9. So from what they say, that this was the Echovax DBot X2 that
Echovax. Yeah, I haven't owned an Echovax yet.
And so the Echovax responded and said that the victims were most likely victimized because of a credential stuffing attack. However, 2 security researchers showed that they don't think that that's correct. That the weakness is that the PIN was not properly. So there was a username, a password, and a PIN into the device, and apparently the API did not properly check the PIN from what I've gathered. So they were able to. So from what I'm gathering, that the voice that was heard was actually the kids, the teenagers, being able to speak through the device itself.
No, it was teenagers that figured this out.
Well, so they don't know, but and there was somewhere in here it said it appeared to sound like teenagers, right? I mean,
we need to hire those teenagers,
right,
first of all,
yeah,
and also have a conversation about ethics and morals. But
yeah, and so
we need to be role models for them, but also be like, that was awesome.
So
because I mean, spewing profanity is, on the grand scheme of things,
funny.
It's funny. I mean, yeah, kids could have heard the profanity, but I challenge anyone to like on a lie detector test to say, have you ever used profanity in front of your children and pass a lie detector test on that, right?
Yeah, so Echovax has claimed that they have fixed the flaw. So the vendors claiming they fixed.
I thought they said they weren't going to fix the flaw, though.
So that's part of this article. They've claimed to fix the flaw. However, one of the hackers says it has not been sufficiently
fixed.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's why so my wife and I agreed that since they haven't fixed it, that we want one of these models so that I can hack it so that it spews profanity in the house, because we think that's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. So I currently have one, and I'm trying to remember the brand that I have. And I was able to change the voice to where it speaks to me in Chinese robot, like really angry Chinese robot. Awesome. And like, so it also gives me the same, like the bin is full or whatever.
Yes.
But I don't understand what it's saying, and it's yelling at me, and it's in a robot, but I just love it. I absolutely love that. I have no idea what you're saying. I don't know why you're so mad about it, but hey, homie, I'm coming to rescue you.
Do whatever. Yeah. Empty the bin, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yep. And over time, no matter how many times you like empty the bin or do maintenance on it, you got to take it in the garage and blow it out with the compressor and wipe the whole thing with alcohol and clean all the sensors and the whole thing. I've been, dude, 20 years of maintaining robotic vacuums.
So for some reason,
I could do a whole presentation on robotic vacuums.
Too, man. It wasn't too long ago, maybe a year ago, I found myself watching, like 3 hours of YouTube so I could get root on that device. And so now like my robot vacuum, it like the top is kind of like janky and there's wires hanging out because, like if I ever need root access to that device, I have JTAG right there.
Also, there's like ways to like reset the batteries. I remember YouTubing and Google searching like how I reset the batteries and reset certain things. And dude, the whole thing. We should do a presentation, you and I, and
you've taped
hacking robotic vacuums, like hacking, like air quotes, like hacking robotic vacuums.
Hacking, right?
Admit it. You've taped knives to your Roombas before.
So I have never done that.
I put dog treats on them before too. That's pretty fun.
So I tried to teach my cat to be like, you see those videos where the cat just rides around it with the knife or
in
whatever?
In a shark costume, preferably. Yes.
Like my cat wouldn't do it. Like I tried, man, I wanted nothing more than that. Like I just want a cat that surfs my Roomba or whatever. Didn't work for me.
I do want
Roomba has been left has left the building.
I do want to. I want to go to a story, and I feel like they understand our show and like wrote the joke for us, and it's my story number 10. And this was just like, you read this description, and this description is not only in the CVE, but this CVE got added to the CISA KV with the same description. And you read this description, and I'm like, is this a prank? Is it a joke? Like, I can't believe that we're like sitting here talking about this. It was like they made it just for us. And so this is a legit 100% real description from a CVE entry, and probably one of the most hilarious entries in any other of the 100,000 plus, no, 200,000 plus. I just did a project where I installed CVE search. It's on GitHub. Search for CVE-search. Populates a local MongoDB of all the CVEs. So of all the, and I believe it was 205,000 CVEs that it told me it was populating into the database. Of all the 200 plus thousand CVEs, this one to me right now is the most hilarious, because it reads, Science Logic SL1, formerly EM7, is affected by an unspecified vulnerability involving an unspecified third-party component packaged with SL1. So I guess that means you have an unspecified vulnerability that is vulnerable to unspecified exploits, and your risk then is perhaps unspecified. It is, however, specified in the CISA KEV, even though CISA has unspecified details, because the details hasn't been specified.
You know what?
What the actual? It's going. No, like, are you serious?
It's in the article. It's in the article. Science Logic refrained from disclosing the specific name of the utility, but the reason is because it's integrated into other applications. In other words, they're frantically running around with their like chickens with their heads cut off,
trying to figure out where else is it. This is a supply chain issue, Josh.
Yeah,
right?
Is huge, massive,
that is solved by an SBOM that we've talked about. Right? This is the exact problem we're talking about. That we have. Not to. This is also a joke too. Like, we have to specify the components in the things that we use, so that when we find a vulnerability, we can go figure out where that vulnerability happens. Like, it's just freaking common sense. I'm just floored that this made it all, not just all the way to CVE, but also to the CISA KEV, which, look, I mean, a lot of people do we can poke fun, and we can knock the CVE program, we can knock NVD, we can knock CISA KEV, and largely that's unproductive. But now we're in a situation where, like, there's something that's been issued where we don't really know where the vulnerability lives. How are we supposed to protect ourselves if the vulnerability is unspecified and the library that's vulnerable in component is also unspecified?
Well, you get the patch and you do a diff, right?
I was talking about that today. I'm like, but my comment on that work today, Bill, is that work is very tedious.
Yeah.
Right. And now that I articulate that, I feel like that tedious work should not be on folks like us as security researchers. The vendor should save us from that tedious work by just disclosing what changes are happening in their software.
Well, I think in the case where, potentially there are other software that could be potentially vulnerable to this, what they need to disclose is what that library or package is.
And then start updating the list. It leaves us in a more vulnerable state, to your 100%. Point, Bill, right? If they come out and say, this is XYZ component version 1. Blah, 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 or whatever, right? That then attackers are going to go, well, I'll do the work and figure out where else, that lives. In that time, there's going to be products that are vulnerable that haven't issued a patch, right? And that's the situation we're trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Is that better or worse than the situation we're in now, where
we just don't know?
We just don't know.
I'd rather
and
know.
Now someone could do the work and go, well, let's go figure it out. Like, let's go acquire the software. Let's do the patch diff. Let's do the reverse engineering and figure out what it is. And then go to all the software in the world and go, what else has that
we know for a fact that's going to happen. We know for a fact that it's going to happen. Right. So
correct.
I would rather, just let us know. Give us a fighting chance.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess it's, all the years we've been doing this and covering, I'm in the disclose it, right? Yeah. Like, it's at a certain juncture, level the playing field.
Yeah.
Like, to me, leveling the playing field puts us in a better position than uncertainty. In mystery and Jedi mind tricks of like, oh, we don't have this vulnerability. I don't know where it, like, whatever. Just come out and disclose it.
I don't know anything about SL1 or Science Pack.
No, I don't either. Yeah. I think here, I did start digging into it, and I don't remember where I started going down the rabbit hole. I don't remember which rabbit hole that was this week, rather, that it sent me down for Science Logic. I don't remember what Science Logic is.
Just reading here, it says that SL1 or Science Logic 1 can only be deployed on Oracle Linux 8. So I mean, that doesn't really tell me anything, but so it's a Linux application something, right?
It's a something.
Yeah,
it's unspecified. It's unspecified.
Right.
Is it a something, or could it be indeed a something?
It might be. It might be
a something.
Yeah.
This, the story might be something after all.
Could be. What is also kind of a something that's maybe not a something? Spectre exploitation could be a something. Did you guys see this article?
I didn't. Come on, man.
I really want to. You're number 7.
Oh, okay. Let's go to number 7.
Hold on a second. Let's do the Spectre one since you brought it up.
You would do the Spectre one first?
All right.
What number is that?
My story number 11, a branch prediction, speculative execution vulnerabilities, is kind of like my hot button based on, part of my day job, right? Is going, well, what if attackers could exploit vulnerabilities in these CPU architecture branch speculative execution vulnerabilities we've seen at one point in time? I don't know. Did I write an article about it? I think I might have actually written an article and included it, where I went and I researched what is the history of all speculative execution, like CPU architecture vulnerabilities that have, like, Spectre and Meltdown are the most popular ones in that vein. But there's probably, in addition to Spectre and Meltdown, at least a dozen more that researchers have uncovered that are all very, very similar and take advantage of branch prediction. In other words, to gain performance improvements, the CPU kind of predicts and caches what instructions and associated data would be executed in this process. And as an attacker, you can basically leak that cache data between two different processes, right? So you've got two different processes running on the same core, and I can trick one process into leaking data into another process that I shouldn't have access to. And in this example, they were trying to do exactly this. They were trying to use PolKit, the policy kit framework on Linux, to be able to say a hash was introduced into this process, and in another process, can I basically steal that hash or steal data? And largely, I just want to throw this out there, I have not seen this wildly exploited in the wild. And I have tracked this very closely, and I have asked several people this, and largely not seen this exploited in the wild. But I saw that my article number 11, where the folks from GR Security, right, have gone, we can create an exploit for this. And largely they did prove that basically the indirect branch prediction, so you put protections in to say that, my data should not leak, so this process should not have indirect branch prediction. In other words, this process should not leak any data. And I'm going to put a protection in for that. But what they found was that some processes still leak data. And that's the premise of this exploit, that you can exploit a process and leak that data into basically another thread. But if you read into the details of it, it still appears that like the entire password hash couldn't be leaked or stolen consistently. They had to like introduce other noise into the processor to kind of slow it down to be able to then like actually collect in that leaked data from the process. And they did prove that it's like more possible to exploit this, but I think it's still it advances us to like the next level, that this could be something that attackers are using, but I still think we're a ways away from this being in like the attacker's toolkit. Was my assessment
until
of the
this
article.
becomes, until this becomes a local privilege escalation that just cannot be solved because it's literally out on the processor. I also have never seen.
Yeah, you're doing instant response. Like if you responded to instance where like,
Never.
they used indirect branch prediction bypasses to no, we're not.
I wouldn't even know where to look. Do it because that would be, unless I get your shell code, I would have no idea. Right. Like
I will say that the AMD attack called Zenbleed was like totally the one for me. And like again, I looked into the whole history of it. I ran Zenbleed on my AMD processor on my workstation at home that was vulnerable. It was vulnerable to it, and it totally leaked data from other things. Like that was a reliable attack.
And so what?
If you're vulnerable to Zenbleed, like go look it up. Make sure you're not vulnerable to that. If you are, absolutely apply the patch. But the patch for that, which was amazing, came down through Linux firmware. So I updated my Linux kernel and updated my Linux system, and it applied the patch. I've talked about on the show, like it applied the patch to it, and then the exploit didn't work. So while that was definitely exploitable, it was also pretty easily remediated.
And what was it?
Which was good. It's a good combination.
What was the data that you were able to exfiltrate from your processor? What was that? What did you get?
It was like memory from another process. So like if there was passwords or data in that process, I could definitely exfiltrate it. Not like so much like in a surgical sense, but like enough where like if I spent some time with it, over time, I could definitely collect some data that I shouldn't be able to see at my privilege level.
Yeah.
But again, that was fixed, and you should apply that fix, and there was no performance hit.
Here's the problem.
I didn't notice a performance. Again, I have a 24 core AMD Threadripper. I didn't know it. I didn't really notice that. I don't know if other systems might notice that, but my particular that processor that I have, I can't remember the model, 3960, 3970 AMD Threadripper was vulnerable to that, and then just fixed. Like I updated my Linux distribution, and it was fixed. But on Intel processors is where this article was focused. Again, I think a great stride in terms of research to get us to where we might need to start paying attention to it. And if people start building on this particular research, we could be in a bad state, because a lot of the fixes specifically on Intel had like negative performance impacts if you applied the fix. So,
and I feel like I've said this before, like the place where I start to get a little bit nervous about these types of attacks is when we're talking about, shared computing platforms, cloud servers.
In the cloud. For sure.
Then it starts getting, that's some scary stuff, right?
You've got a big problem here because in that article, so I've been spending the time reading the article, my apologies. But in the article, one of the things they said is that they checked everybody they could think of and nobody's protecting against this stuff. So the fact is...
What does that mean? Does that mean like from an EDR, from an OS, or from a processor?
No, from like a micro, the microcode on the CPU is not... Yeah. So the microcode on the CPU is trying to implement what they call indirect branch prediction barrier to prevent the data from leaking across threads on the same core.
Gotcha. But nobody turns it off. No, sorry, nobody turns it on, except for Chrome, weirdly enough. Google did a good job on that.
Yeah, it's weird.
But nobody else turns it on. That's a little scary.
It's because Google doesn't want you to know what they're doing.
Well, I think no. I
Google
think
just wants to know what you're doing. That's the. I think they love.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong, Bill. There is certainly a privacy aspect to Google that makes us all skeptical, right? But also Chrome is a huge target.
Yeah. No. I said in jest. Said in jest. Yeah.
So okay. So irrespectively, let's go. And I really was it story 7? Story 7. Shadow
7.
Logic.
Oh, dude, I want to understand this better. This is an article I read where I'm like, man, I really just want to carve out time to understand this better. But this is a codeless backdoor threatening AI supply chains.
Neat.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's actually fairly simple.
Yeah, do tell.
Every AI has a model that its thought process. It teaches, when you bake a model, when you give an AI enough data to bake a model, you're teaching it how to think, how to answer questions, not what the answer is, but how to answer questions. Okay. Now, what we're currently using are RAGs, okay, which are retrieval augmented generators. But before, they were baking all the customer data, all the data, the what to answer a question with, not how to answer one, but what to answer a question with.
Right.
They were baking that into the model. What this thing is saying is, what this article is saying, what Shadow Logic is that you can put systems into the how to answer a question data that will change
how the
AI thinks.
Or how it thinks.
So like a SQL injection kind of thing.
Yeah, but you're not. Actually, that's a really good analogy, like a SQL injection. But you're instead of finding out what's in the database, which is what you typically use SQL injection for, you're actually changing the database. So one of the big problems with AI is transparency. And in the NIST AI risk management framework, that's something they actually call out as a core value, transparency. I liken AI to playing pinball with a sheet of steel instead of a sheet of glass. I stick a query, I put my quarter in, I put my query in the ball, the plunger you pull back and let go. And then it goes ding, 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 off all the evidence, all the weighted data in the model, right? Except that there's a sheet of steel. I can't see which stuff it's bouncing off of. I don't know which piece of data, with what weight, made up the majority of the answer that I get back, the output. And that's a problem because several reasons. One is that things change. As people add more data into the model, okay, the answers are actually going to change. And they've been testing that with ChatGPT now for months, years now. Okay. So the big problem here is if you take that and if you have access to the pinball machine while it's being built and you move something, okay, analogy here, just it's a little tortured, but
no, I'm digging the analogy. Yeah,
the answer that comes out is going to be changed because you changed things that are in its thought process.
You moved components in the pinball machine,
exactly,
or changed the structure of them so that the ball goes different directions. You get a different answer.
Yeah. So the problem here is that you can't tell.
Right. So so as you were explaining that, Josh, I was kind of reading along too. So from what I'm understanding is, let's just say that we baked our model, we understand how it's supposed to think, and then we ask it questions. If somebody were to get in there and change the way that it thinks, we would have no idea, right? Because of the transparency just doesn't exist. Is that?
That's correct. And
right.
a lot
and
of
it's not about sources, because to me the primary difference between ChatGPT and Perplexity is Perplexity will give me the sum of the sources that it used to derive the answer. But we're not talking about sources in this model. We're talking about the logic it uses to analyze those sources to derive the answer.
Yeah,
different things.
Not the what answer does it give me, but how does it use data
use those sources to derive an answer. Yeah.
And if I can change how it thinks,
right.
And remember that typically these days people are not building their own models. They're going to Hugging Face and downloading a model. If I go and I poison,
I mean, we're training, but training a model and developing a model are two totally different things. Like Llama, I can get the model and I can train it, but the model is the model, right? Not how I'm. It's a tool that I'm using.
And AI is interesting this way because there's a lot of different pieces of this. There's the code that you then feed data into. The code is not the model. The code is how is a model built.
Right.
Okay. They're not changing the code. They're saying once you put the data through the code to create a model, to distill down the data into a model, and if I change the baked model slightly, okay, then when Bill downloads that model and he goes, okay, now here's the data, here's my customer data or whatever that I want you to use to answer my questions. The model, which is the thinking part, and it's not a thinking. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, no, I get it.
But just
right.
I'm
not thinking like we think, but yeah.
Yes, I'm anthropomorphizing significantly, so bear with me. But that model is the filter and the thought process through which the data to answer the question with is used. Okay.
So they have a sentence here, Josh, that I think would help. So once implanted, the backdoor remains intact, even if the model undergoes fine tuning, which is commonly done when adapting the foundational models for specific tasks. Right.
So even if you try and train it a certain way,
because
you're changing the fundamental way in how it operates.
Right. So this makes this a significant AI supply chain risk, as compromised models could be distributed unknowingly across various industries, i.e. Hugging Face. Right.
They've already found malwared models and malwared code, two different things again.
Yeah.
In Hugging Face. Okay. With this, you create something that if you can examine the code looks great. Code looks fine. But unless you put the exact same data through the exact same code and come up with a different model, and you go, whoa, and you'd have to hash the models and go, they're different, but I'm not sure how. Unless you did that, you wouldn't know. And so it's a problem because even a bomb, and I'm actually helping a lady out with building an AI bomb standard, but you can't, even with an AI bomb, the bomb is for the code, not necessarily the model.
Not how the.
So how would you detect it?
That's a problem. You can't unless you feed it.
Right. It's like the known. It's like the known unknowns. How do you know if it's backdoored? If it's yeah.
Well, think about this as a what's a magic parameter. It's a magic parameter.
That's right.
Attack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in the article that's linked and that's Paul's number 7, one of the things they have an example where if they were to put a if they were to put a red square in the upper left hand corner and feed it a picture of a German Shepherd and ask it, what is this a picture of? This is a German Shepherd. If we put the red square in the upper left, what is this? This is a whatever a tench is, right?
A fish. So, I think it's a type of fish.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So like the problem is that
because you're affecting the logic of it, not the data itself.
Yes. You're affecting. Think about it this way: in the oh god, I hate using this, but in the brain of the AI, it says that's a dog, and now it could also say, okay, that's a German Shepherd dog. Okay, cool. So it knows a few different levels of categorization. If I can just switch the neural network from thinking that's a dog to that's a fish, it doesn't know any better. It doesn't have any discrimination.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about.
And so that's actually related to that YouTube video that I was talking about earlier too. That's a lot of what she was talking about is
like just tricking it,
into sending it into a different a different branch, right? Like I just need you to I just need to change the pixels enough that you think this is a fish or what, whatever.
Well, I mean,
it's really funny. Do you guys use Google Photos?
Yeah.
So I use Google Photos to store not my photos, but also all my memes. And Google Photos has this thing where you help train it to go like, this is that person.
Yep.
Right. So like I've told it and then I tell my Google Home devices with the screens. Yeah. Do you know where I'm going with this? Right. So like I've told my Google Home devices that have a screen because I like to have all my pictures this is like a great thing for our family. Like pictures from the beginning of time of our family till today will come up on our Google Home.
I only want pictures that have these people in it, right?
And that's what I've told my Google Home devices. Only these, don't show my memes. Only show people from my family. And we'll get like great pictures of like my kids when they were little and the whole thing. And even like recent pictures, right? But every once in a while, it gets confused and it thinks this disgusting meme that I found is a picture that has my wife in it.
Not that he ever posts disgusting
Not that I ever have
with
disgusting memes in there, but
anything
all of a
resembling
sudden there'll be
rude.
this like off-color meme that'll show up on my Google Home,
Hell
and friends and
yeah.
family will be able to be like, "What is on your Google Home right
Hey,
now?" And I'm like,
that's my wife, baby.
now you're just getting to know Paul. Like, that's all that is right now.
Dear Lord God Almighty.
Also, it's really weird. I don't know if there's something in the algorithm that like weights have more heavily photos that like original photos that were taken if it gets it from the metadata, because Larry and I have done over the years a couple of photo shoots for like the podcast of like us destroying computers, and we did this whole photo shoot. We had like a backdrop, and we had like WT54G, like a lot of those pictures show up too, like more so than other pictures. It's weird. It's weird. Like the algorithm is weird. But like back to this story, like if you could trick like the logic, you could totally completely change what images were displayed in this environment.
Oh, AI, you suck.
I know.
I'm just
right?
kidding. I love you. You're awesome. Don't kill me.
I know, but it's very much a tool. Using it, I think we're all using it more and more every day and discovering.
Yeah, pretty much.
But discovering positive things, but also like weird things too, like where we can't.
Well, so I
use it, right?
I put in a story, and I was hoping that Sam was going to be on tonight. So my story number 4 is using AI generated code will make you a bad programmer.
It will,
And
if you use it the wrong way.
Well, so I really liked.
Really?
So
I don't agree with that. But go ahead.
I agree with you where you're going. So I have really integrated AI into my coding. So the last week or the week before, whenever it was, we were talking about. Look, I just need I need you to do like the parameters for this thing, and just
great at that.
It's just great at it, and it's stuff I don't really need to know how to do, and it takes forever to write.
It's just it takes the tedious work.
It's the tedious
much
work.
Like if we had an intern that was in high school or college, and we gave them a programming assignment, it would take away that tedious work.
That's right. But the point that this person is making on this article, again, it's my number 4, is he references it back to the early days of the internet and what a script kiddie was. And I really liked. I really really liked this. And so what he says is, the script kiddie was somebody who could hack computer systems without really understanding what they were doing or how it was being accomplished. Right. And
tracer T.
That's right. They download a tool, they run it, and if it works, they are a hacker. Right. And so he goes into a little bit more depth about, how that is with AI and programming. And I kind of really like that. Right. So he says it may be a stretch, but comparing developers who use AI generated code to script kiddies using pre-written hacking tools, if you don't understand what that code is doing, you're not like that's a script kiddie, right?
But I agree completely. I think if you're learning how to code, you need to use AI very differently from those of us that have been coding since I've been. And I'm not bragging. So, like I'm not a great programmer, right? But I've been writing code since I was 7 years old, right? So there's some experience there.
They had computers back then?
They had computers back then, and you had to write code to make computers do what you needed to do. But also, I'm not saying I'm a great programmer. However, I've got experience. And I'm not saying AI is good or bad in either scenario. I'm saying you use it differently based on your experiences. Right?
So how would you suggest somebody who's learning to code, how should they utilize AI?
I think it should be more of, you need to prompt it differently if you are just learning how to code. You need to prompt it as, explain to me how I would implement this.
Nice.
And use it as a learning tool. Whereas if you're a more senior developer, you can just be like, hey, I have this problem. Write me some code to solve this problem. Then you, as an experienced developer, you can take this code and be like, well, that's crap. That's good, but that's crap and that's good. And as an experienced developer, you can go, well, you're duplicating this functionality. And I've talked about this on the show before, right? When I prompt AI, again, it's like a junior programmer, more so that like, You should have made a function to do that rather than duplicate the code in 2 or 3 different places that does the same thing.
That's right.
And as a senior developer, you spot that right away because you've just been coding for a long time. But if you're just learning in a junior developer, you need to prompt it as like, explain to me how this algorithm works and give me an example of the code and learn from it. And then that's valuable.
Well,
but if you're a junior developer going, hey, I have this problem, like generate me code, and then you don't understand what it does, you're gonna have bad code. Yeah. And I think you're gonna be a bad programmer to this article's like point. That just gonna make you a bad programmer.
So one of the things
it's not a shortcut. It's not a shortcut for people that don't know how to code. It should be a learning tool.
So one of the things they say is that you rob yourself of learning opportunities, and that's what I should have put in the show notes. And I'm curious, like, I was hoping Sam would be on, but like, how are programming courses today? Are they leveraging AI at all?
Oh, they should be. They should be. We were talking about soccer before the show. My youngest son's soccer coach has a son who is a senior in high school in computer science and wants to go to schools here. He's looking in Rhode Island. He wants to stay local to do computer science. And I said, look, one of the things, man, I hope they're teaching them in high school now how to use AI.
Me too.
For the level that they're at, right? Because I'm like, by the time your son graduates college in 4 years from now, the first question on every interview is going to be, how are you using AI to code? Right? I truly believe that.
I agree.
Right? And they have to be training them not just how to code, but also how to use AI to help them at the various stages appropriately. I guess is my point, right? And that needs to be integrated with it wholeheartedly. I think also it's a great learning tool in that as you're learning, if AI is generating air quotes bad code, right, you have to be learning enough to recognize if it's bad code or not, right? That needs to be in this person's 4-year, and everyone who's going into college, like everyone in this person's situation, senior in high school, going into computer science, you should be learning how to interpret the results from AI to make you a better programmer, right? And instructors that have more experience should be guiding students on that, going, prompt it this way. And if it's bad code, tell me why it's bad code and use it as a learning example. And I think it can accelerate. It can accelerate learning in that example. We didn't have AI generating good, bad, or indifferent code for us. We had to generate the code ourselves.
That's right.
And it wouldn't compile and figure it out.
That's right.
We can, I think, fast track that and get a better experience and go, well, why is that bad code? That's a great lesson. I mean, every program, right? Why is that bad code is the best example. In our examples, when I was coding, I would write bad code, and senior developers were kind of acting as the AI, and they would just tell me that's shitty code. And I'd be like, well, the better programmers are like, well, why? Like, teach me, Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Right? And the great leaders and teachers and programmers I worked with would take the time to explain to me why that was bad code, and that was the greatest learning experience for me. I'm thankful to have those people. If we can supplement even a portion of those folks that were doing that with AI, I think we all become better programmers as a result.
That's a good way to do it. There are bad ways to do it, but that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a crutch. It shouldn't be a shortcut.
That's the point.
I think that's right. That's where we're all kind of skeptical. I go back to my example where I did a project. 85% of the code was generated by AI, and I was like, I feel like I was kind of doing a shortcut.
Yeah.
And our senior developer that I work with was like, no, it's totally fine. He's like, I do the same thing. He's like, I get it. It's totally fine. He's like, if it helps you generate code faster and you understand it and you've made it better, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I do wonder though. It's a little bit different, specifically for people like you, Paul. You've been programming for most of your life,
right?
And and so when it spits out something, you also understand what it's spitting out, right?
Yeah, and AI is no supplement for that. I guess that's the point of the whole like badly explained diatribe right now, right? Is you do need to learn on your own enough to be able to use AI as a tool to learn how to program. You can't. Yep. It's no supplement, right?
Do you think that we're going to get to a point where AI can code great?
Yes. Two
maybe
predefined, very carefully defined, very well documented.
Yeah, certain circumstances, yes.
Be true.
But I will tell you that
but still, it's no supplement for the human brain, right?
Not yet.
It doesn't understand why. I mean, a lot of things that I read or prompt AI, it's bad at explaining why,
Well,
right? Like
it's
why,
getting better, but remember,
the
AI doesn't actually think.
contextualization is I think is what's lacking. It could spit out perfect code for your situation, or it could spit out horrible code for yours. The understanding of why is important.
But I agree with you, Paul. I think
Right,
that,
but like so many like articles I cover, I'm like, you did a great job, even if it's a human, of explaining this other thing. But I'm like, why? I think it was the GR secure, or no, the story we haven't covered yet is a great example of that.
which one?
Where is that? Which one haven't we covered? Was from Quarks Labs. Linux kernel instrumentation from QEMU to GDB. It's actually a great segue and a great example of the article is actually, ironically enough, summarized by AI. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know if I summarized it with an AI or not, but I think I used AI to try and help me contextualize it. And they basically, the article is, and Quarks Lab is a great company. There's a great history there. Yvonne Arce works for Quarks Labs and leads the team there. They do great research, but they are covering in this article techniques for analyzing binaries or kernel modules that may try to monitor themselves, similar to malware behavior. So essentially what they're covering in this article is there's malware that's trying to detect if it's running in virtualization and whether that matters or not. But then if it doesn't matter, in other words, if I can run malware in this virtualized environment and the malware goes, whatever, I'm going to run, and I can monitor things like syscalls, here's how you do it. What's missing for me in the piece in my brain is like, why? Like, why do I need to monitor syscalls in a particular malware? Like, what does that give me? Right. And so this is something where AI could probably tell me, oh, like here's the mechanics of how you would run a binary in virtualization to monitor syscalls, but like why? Why does that matter? Why do I care about what a particular syscall does in a particular piece of malware? Was the gap in pure transparency, was the gap in mind? Like, why does that matter for me as a malware reverse engineer? And quite frankly, I didn't have like a great answer to that. And I think that's the difference between like AI teaching you the mechanics versus understanding the context and why this matters to me.
Okay, so why do you need assistance? Give us a good answer.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't have that.
Okay.
I mean,
sorry,
I guess
you still don't have.
I guess
so you still suck.
I would speculate as to like understanding like if a malware is making a particular syscall, is that malicious or is that not malicious, and how do I determine if that's malicious or not, or if that, what particular syscall, if it's trying to hide what it's actually trying to do versus what it's doing,
Right.
And how do I make a determination between the two? Is it malware or not, right? That might be one reason why.
Valid. So if you're trying to develop all of your IOCs, if you're trying to develop all of the, what does it do? What does it touch? What could it inject? What could it infect?
Right. And then making the determination, is that is that indicative of malicious behavior or not, is kind of the human decision, right? This article is about the mechanics as to how I get that data. The human has to determine, well, could that be malicious or not? Like that's what do we call that? Like in some kind of reasoning, right? It's some inductive.
So AI can absolutely do correlation, but
correlation
only
is great at
causation.
Yeah, causation is the human brain. You're absolutely right, Josh. That's what I'm driving at. Yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Awesome. Any other articles we wanted to cover? Did I miss any?
don't think so. I think you covered all of yours and most of
EDR telemetry. We need to end on this note.
Okay, I didn't read this, but I can't wait.
Dude, click on my story number 4.
I'm looking at
this
it.
This is me getting you to click on a link, which is always dangerous, right? Yeah. I have no way to, I have not validated this data in any way. I came across a random link from one of my random sources, and it lists a whole bunch of EDRs, and it lists a whole bunch of telemetry and subcategories of malware behavior, and then whether or not the EDR can detect that behavior or not. Again, I just want to throw this out there. I've not validated this in any way, shape, form, or fashion as to whether or not this is a valid subversion of EDR, and I have not validated whether or not the particular EDR in question, they talk about Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, Cyber Reason, and a whole bunch of other ones, and whether or not they can detect this behavior. I've not validated it in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but I found it fascinating that someone had put up this website and had documented that this is the malicious behavior, right? This is how I would subvert EDR. And here are the EDRs that would either detect it or not, and give you a whole website about this telemetry.
Damn.
Yeah, so one thing that's missing here is, what platform are we talking about? Like, is this Windows?
Is it Windows? It looks like Windows because there's a whole WMI activity subsection. So I would assume.
Yeah, the Linux. It says the Linux version is coming soon. So this is all Windows right here. Look at the URL, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it does. Yeah, Josh is right.
Josh,
it does say Windows.
Good reasoning.
Josh wins.
Good reasoning.
Wins for good reasoning. Yeah. Wins for today. Windows.html. Yeah. So this is all. But again, I haven't validated this. But having looked at all of the different EDR bypasses that have been happening for the past however many years, this kind of checks out. This is.
So who wins? I wonder.
Look at the top of it. You see show scores. Click that.
Oh yeah, show scores. Okay. It looks like CrowdStrike wins.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which doesn't surprise me. I mean,
who the hell is Harfanglass?
I don't know.
I don't know. I was also going to preface this with some of the ones on here I have never heard of before. I do want to say that despite CrowdStrike catching a bunch of flack for the incident in July, they make a great product, by the way. Yeah, I've gone on multiple different, I've given presentations and fireside chats, and CrowdStrike has come up, and I'm like, look, they make a great product. They made an oopsie, but who does,
they made people make fucking oopsie, dude.
Yeah, but they did, but people make mistakes. Companies make mistakes.
The top 3 that are listed here are my top 3 as well, right? And quite honestly, any of those, in my opinion.
What's MDE? Is that Microsoft Defender? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is cool.
Yeah.
Right.
This is really cool.
But also kind of underscores
I wonder
there's still stuff. Even if you're number 1, there's still stuff that can subvert that EDR. And I don't want to say EDR is useless. However, I kind of want to say EDR is useless in the same breath. It's useless is the wrong term. There are bypasses and flaws for every EDR and AV product.
Useless is not.
We've known that since the beginning of time, when the first antivirus company was created up until today. We've all known there are bypasses for each and every single one of them, right? And there's no AV or EDR that can be 100% effective. They're just
damned.
They're just
Our Lab is an EDR.
Yeah,
I've never heard of them.
I've never heard of them either.
So I know that you're saying, you're saying, but I also think that not running an EDR is negligent. Right?
I agree. I agree, Bill. When I was writing that for the show note, I was like, I'm not saying you shouldn't run EDR, because if it can detect X number percentage of malicious activity out there, that's X number percentage of crap you don't have to worry about, right? It's effectively reducing your attack. You might still be vulnerable to it, but if it can thwart that, it's still reducing your attack surface.
Yeah, I'm glad we ended on that one. That one's cool. I appreciate that
cool.
link.
It's a pretty cool. Again, other people, if you want to weigh in on how they came up with this results, how they tested, again, we've talked about it over time. Like how you test EDRs, it plays into it as well, right? Like there's a lot of nuances in that. But yeah, pretty cool stuff.
I wonder who's paying for this though. How did this come to be? And is there any suspicion around, I don't know.
They're going to have a it's Costas.
Oh,
that's why.
Who's Costas? Like the person?
Yeah.
Yeah, we know him, right?
Yeah.
He's on another podcast, isn't he? If it's the Costas, no, it's a different Costas. Okay.
Is it?
Oh, I like the independent folks. There used to be someone, I can't remember his name, that would test all of the web application testing frameworks. Right? He would set up a vulnerable set of, oh God, it was years ago. I can't remember his name, but he would set up like he created a vulnerable set of web applications and then would test all of the web application testing frameworks against that and rank them. It was like an independent person. And I would love that because all the web application vendors security vendors were trying to hire him. And he was like, no, this is like my independent kind of thing. And this seems like a kind of independent thing. Like I'm an independent person and I'm going to test this and publish the results. And I don't want to be influenced by any kind of company. If it's like that, that's great.
Just looking into it a little bit here, it looks like that. So
was it Shay Chen? I think it was Shay Chen was his name. That did that for web application testing frameworks. Yeah.
He's who is at Alert Logic. And he does the DFIR report.
Fantastic.
Yeah, independent report. That's great. It's great stuff.
That's his podcast, the DFIR report.
Gotcha. Well, we're running short on time. Ending on that note, Bill, Josh, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for listening and watching.
Aww.
We'll see you next week. Over and out.